Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People Podcast. We have got Jenna Wilson from Little Dreams. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you, correct if I'm right, you help people sleep.
Yeah,
more in particularly babies sleep.
We
babies
do.
and children sleep.
Yeah.
So did you have a good sleep last night?
I did actually.
So what's the secret to good sleep?
For everyone, or babies, getting your babies and children to sleep,
Well,
that's the secret.
Yeah. I mean, you fix that, then you'll fix your sleep.
Yeah.
But obviously sleep is something that we all take for granted
Yeah.
until actually we can't sleep, and
Yeah.
then it becomes a problem. And
Yeah.
certainly as I got older, I've noticed certain drinks affecting me more.
Yeah, definitely.
I used to drink tea all day long, and then if I drink tea maybe at, I don't know, maybe at 8, 9 o'clock at night, I'll sleep to about 1 and then I'm up.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning about this sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Caffeine has a half-life of about 8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So it really can stay. So I don't have, this is very dull, but I'm a 2 coffee girl up before midday.
Is that right?
And then that's it for me personally. And
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
everyone is very different. And generally we don't have to advise our clients about their children's caffeine intake, but thankfully we work with children up to the age of 10. So, but yeah, sleep is, I think, a lot more complicated than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah.
I think because, if you've been able to sleep, then that's great. Whereas what we find with little ones is that, if I kind of explain really briefly how sleep
go for it,
works. So when babies are newborns, they spend half their time in deep sleep, which is where their growth hormone and all of those things that are secreted are. Half their time in dream sleep, which is where they organize their day, their emotion, kind of people pull lots of faces at babies and newborns. So they organize kind of all that emotional new information. And then when babies hit what everyone calls the 4-month sleep regression, which is the development of sleep cycles, then if little ones have always fallen asleep relying on something, they'll come to the edge of their sleep cycle, and rather than rolling over and go back to sleep again, because that's what they can do, if they've been assisted to sleep, like feeding or motion or anything like that, they come to the edge of their sleep cycle and they're like, oh my goodness, it's as if we've fallen asleep in our bed and then woken up on the kitchen floor.
Right.
They go, oh my goodness, I'm on the kitchen floor. I need some help to get back to sleep again. So we always say to parents, if what they're doing for them is working, then there's no need to change anything. But little ones who kind of don't sleep well, generally is because they have a reliance on something, and then that's no longer working for the family.
So from my perspective, I remember when me and Claire, me and my wife, we became parents for the first time, and we had our little baby Bella, who's now 17, and the time that she was born meant that she got the days and nights completely back to front. And yeah, I remember that first 2 weeks just thinking, what have we done? It was like, oh my gosh, and we can't sleep.
Yeah.
And eventually things began to shift around or whatever. And as I said, you didn't realize how much you take for granted until you have a child, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is a thing.
Yeah.
And it took a while to undo. And so, now obviously, all our kids are grown up, but it'd be nice to be forewarned and forearmed for when I'm older and they decide to have kids in how to address some of those things.
Yeah.
So in an instance like that, where a baby has the nights and days modeled up, what would you say? What would be the solution in something like that?
So that's really going to be a newborn. It's not really a problem. It's just kind of a newborn issue.
Yeah.
Is there obviously generally mummies, when they're walking around, the baby's going to be in the womb, and during the day there's a lot of movement, and often they find that when they then go to bed there's a lot of as in like movement from mummy, so the baby's asleep, because babies do sleep and they think dream in the womb as well. And then obviously on a night time mummy's going to bed and there's not as much movement, and so babies tend to be awake a little bit more, although they need huge amounts of sleep, newborns 14 to 17 hours in a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
So really what we suggest, and we do antenatal packages, so we don't work with newborns because, as I said, newborn sleep is different. But we do newborn packages. And so we just tend to say in that first 6 weeks, really the only goals that parents should have are firstly get home and kind of adjust to this massive new change. Because I teach on an antenatal course, a couple of them, and I always say to parents, there might be points where you think, well, what did we do? We had a lovely life before. What have we done?
That's it,
Whereas actually, it's just a transition and get to know each other, and the only thing really to do in that first 6 weeks is to help the baby to learn the difference between night and day. And really by doing that you just make night feeds and night wakings quite boring and dull. This is not me saying don't look at your baby, but just chat to them quietly to make sure that they can see that there's nothing exciting going on, and in the daytime just make the feeds more bright and chatty.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really the only things that you need to be thinking about in the first 6 weeks, really.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when you step in, like, what's the sort of symptoms of the problem that parents get, where you maybe get called or someone says, hey, you need to speak to these people?
Yeah.
What's normally the sort of like the diagnosis, the challenges there?
It tends to be, and like I said, if what families are doing is working for them, then absolutely fine. There's no need to change because of any other reason. But what we often find is that the little ones will then wake and be awake and need help to get back to sleep again every hour or two. And they can't nap in their cot, or if they are napping in their cot, it's because they've been transferred to their cot and they can't nap for very long periods of time. And so the parents, we work with lots of professionals, we work with lots of doctors, solicitors, barristers, people that need their sleep.
Yeah, of course.
And we all need our sleep, but parents are also going to work to do a job that requires quite a lot of concentration. And so they need to get their sleep. And so being awake for every hour or two in the night to help their little one get back to sleep again isn't sustainable for a lot of the families that we work with.
Yeah.
So that's generally when we get involved, is when, the parents, people only call us when there's a problem, and we only want them to call us if there's a problem. We're not here to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But it's just that if what they're doing is no longer sustainable for them, then that's, what we'll help with.
So obviously, let's go back even further then. So you're at school. That probably wasn't on your radar as a career, was it?
No.
So how did you get to that? How did you get to this journey to start doing this as your thing?
So I wanted to be a solicitor from the age of 12.
Okay.
So I qualified. So I did that. I did uni, did my LPC, did my training contract, qualified, became an associate, was on the children panel, which meant that I could represent children as well in the proceedings.
So you can start to see,
Yeah, there's a definite link. And had my first child, and everyone said, well, things will change when you have children. And I went back and I thought, I don't know what they're talking about. And I had my second child and I went, I see what you're talking about. Okay. And I just decided that I wasn't in love with it anymore, which I had been throughout the whole of my career.
Yeah.
Saw a careers coach for a little while to sort of work out what was important to me, and then just kept seeing a Facebook ad on Facebook for the original training that I did 8.5 years ago now. And so mentioned it to my husband one night. I just felt like I wasn't really at the time a big fan of the universe trying to tell me something, but I couldn't escape the fact that someone was trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it to my husband one evening and he said, oh my gosh, that's perfect for you. Why don't you, because my children slept well, but because I was quite routine led, I was quite, conscious of their sleep because I was a solicitor. I did a lot of advocacy. I needed sleep.
Yeah, of course.
And I did the training. I absolutely loved it. I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, with my third child. And, did a little bit of both while I was on mat leave because I needed to know if I was going to leave this career that I wanted to do since I was 12. Was I absolutely sure that that's what I wanted to do? Yeah, huge. Did I want to not be employed? It's a big jump, becoming self-employed.
Yep.
And anyway, long story short, did it. And I've never looked back. So that was, 8.5 years ago. We launched Little Dreams. And then, of course, Faye came on board. We started expanding and got to the point where we thought, if we're going to expand in the rate that we're going, we need a plan.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine happened to work at the British Franchise Association and suggested that perhaps franchising might be a good route for us.
Okay.
So we franchised just over 3 years ago.
So how many franchises have you got now?
We've got 6 territories now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
To begin with, we were very much... we were quite cautious taking people on and also wanted to make sure that we had all the foundations and everything in place. So, we had our pilot franchise of Bristol and then we took on some founder franchisees and asked for very brutal feedback, which they were brilliant at giving, which was really, really helpful. And then kind of took the next stage of non-founder franchisees, and now we're, this year planning to...
So that's quite interesting because a lot of people don't want that feedback, but you actually ask for it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I had to learn very early on in my journey in entrepreneurship, was that, I didn't want feedback. I know what I'm doing. Just leave me alone, and then you're going to create me more problems than not. And then I've realized now, like I work in software as well, feedback is absolutely vital to develop whatever you build. So it's almost like the opposite. It's like the more feedback you get, the better it is, because you can identify different things or change user journeys and stuff like that. So for me, just doing that as like a first time entrepreneur and then ask for feedback, that's great. You know, it's a great way of starting and growing your business and now building something that you're really proud of and sustainable.
We wanted to get the foundations right. I think, you know, my background as a solicitor, Faye, my business partner was a mental health social worker.
Yeah.
So we're both, you know, we've come at this from professions. We know that it can be a little bit scary to kind of take the jump from, you know, an employed role to something that is insanely flexible, but you know, you are running your own company. And we wanted to make sure that it was as good as it possibly could be, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. And in fact, you know, we're a very, very data-led company as well. So from the very beginning, we've collected lots of data, which means that we review everything every 3 months. We have like a meeting to review. We look at what the data says, you know, if we're testing whatever it might be, or we're very, I think, gosh, this is going to sound quite conceited, but I think we're quite good at looking at the information and then making a change, or getting information and feedback and thinking,
but it's in your DNA,
what do we do with
it?
this?
Yeah, but it's in your DNA, you know, because ultimately, you know, the reason why people are more aware of sleep now is data.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, whereas before we didn't have that data. It was just, oh, they're grumpy.
Yeah.
That was the only data we had.
Yeah.
Now you can wear watches and tells you sleep and then tells you deep sleep, and you can adjust behaviors, and people are more aware of things. But you know, for me, that feedback loop, that data helps you build a much stronger and better business.
100%.
You know?
And we're very evidence-based as a company from a sleep perspective as well. So for example, on our franchise course, the course that our franchisees do, we have a world-leading expert in relation to sleep and attachment, crying and attachment and sleep. We have the Lullaby Trust Do training on our course. We have external experts, obviously, you know, Faye and I do the majority of it, but we also have external experts. We have solicitors in relation to GDPR. So we're very much of the, you know, evidence-based approach. And we're the only sleep course in the UK to be approved by the Association of Professional Sleep Consultants.
Right. Okay.
Who, you know, are the kind of overarching voluntary body for sleep consultants.
Wow. So what sort of age would you say that you get involved with? What age is the child that you start working with?
Yeah, so we work with little ones from around 4 months to 10 years old.
Okay.
The kind of mass majority of children, I would say, probably between 5 to 6 months and maybe 12 to 13 months, which I think is the time that parents are told by which things will be lots better. And then mummies generally tend to go back to work around 9 to 12 months. And I think we work with a lot of parents, but mummies mostly because they're often the ones on maternity leave, who want to enjoy the rest of their time, and they don't feel that they are the best parents that they can be because they're exhausted, they're surviving day to day. And so for me, you know, like I said, we tend to work to around 4.5 months. But what I really, really love is working with mummies who at the, you know, very beginning, bear with me when I say this, the very beginning, you know, on their knees, absolutely exhausted. And I love knowing that in 2 weeks, they'll be in such a different place and they'll be getting much more sleep, and their parenting journey is going to be transformed because they're going to be able to enjoy the days that they have. Yeah,
I remember very, very early on in my entrepreneur career, I read a statement, you know, just in business, and they turned around and said, you know, tiredness magnifies, the situation and the problem. And they said, if you want to remove that and get time back, go to bed an hour earlier each day, and by the end of the week technically you could have gained 7 hours extra sleep, and in just that could make a big difference to your mental health and the way that you make decisions. And it just stuck with me, you know. And occasionally when I'm really tired, I literally go, right, you know what, I'm checking out, and I'll go to bed at 8:30 and I'm gone. I'm like, and I wake up, you know, same time I normally would, but I feel so much better. But it's just a sure sign to me that you're running on empty and you just need to sleep. And it's like, for me, who wants to be busy and doing this, that and the other, eventually your body's like, I don't care how busy you want to be. You just need to stop. And I think so often with parents and parenting is that, you know, if you are tired and if you are ratty or whatever, you think you are a terrible parent and you're the only person going through it. And what am I doing wrong, and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, when you work with someone, particularly the parents and stuff, is it like a one-on-one, or is there a community that has come out of this, or, How does that work?
A bit of both, I suppose. So we have what our standard package is that we work with families. So we have a free call with them first of all to make sure that we understand the situation and to make sure that we're the right fit for them as well, because obviously every parenting journey is different and we're very, very respectful of that. Then they would fill in a questionnaire, about 65 questions. Send that back. We create a bespoke sleep plan for their little one.
Okay.
Generally meet with them via Zoom. Pre-COVID, we almost always met people face to face. And then we realised it was because we want both parents on the call, so everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
We realised that it was easier for perhaps the parent that was at work, or if both parents are at work, to Zoom in a lunch break or what have you, than it is for them to take time off and that sort of thing. And then we support them for either the 2 to 3 weeks as they're supporting their little one. So we have as many phone calls, emails as we need. And there's also sleep analysis, sleep log analysis. But with older children, kind of children in a bed around 3-4 years and older, we actually engage with the children as well.
Yep.
So we work with the parents, as we said, but we'll meet with the little one, depending on their age, have a chat about who their favourite Paw Patrol pup is and talk about the benefits of sleep in an age-appropriate way. And then we check in with them as they're going. So we don't make it about sleep in relation to older children. It's very much things that they can control.
Yep.
And then kind of they get on board, and then we kind of check in with them with either videos or little FaceTimes, whatever works best for them. But there's as much support really as the family need during that kind of support period.
So I remember, as a child, I was told by my mum that the only way I would go to sleep when I got to that age was they put a tape recorder, remember those?
Yeah, I do.
Underneath the bed, and it was Elvis.
Wow.
And they would just play Elvis, and I would just go to sleep. And weirdly, sometimes, if I can't sleep, I'll put a YouTube video in, and then watch it for 2 or 3, and then gone.
Yeah.
It's almost like that white noise or whatever it is somewhere subconsciously still there, and it's sometimes the only way I can get to sleep when I can't sleep is to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm only watching it for 2 minutes, and if I hadn't done that, I'm still that awake. Mm-hmm. And then put it on.
You've probably got a teeny tiny little reliance from when you were little.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That you've got rid of through the years, but then when your body's really struggling, you kind of go back to your little sleep reliance, and then you need to go back to sleep again.
My wife's not singing Elvis songs.
Maybe she should.
Yeah, maybe she should, yeah. So the other thing, as children get older, and I always remember this, like now, and obviously my kids, is that when the summertime changes, because that's often a big one, isn't it? It's 7 o'clock. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It is. No, it's dark, and it's not. And so, how would you address that sort of stuff where the light changes? Is it about blackout blinds and all that sort of stuff? Or not? What would you...
Kind of depends on the age of the child, I suppose. So if your little one's under 2.5, let's say, and is not scared of the dark, because that's a sort of an acquired fear, as it were. You're not born with it. You kind of learn it through things that people say, maybe the television, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So we always say pitch black. So with my youngest had a beautifully south-facing room, but when it was sunny for nap times especially, it was a real pain. But we would have we had blackout blinds, but I also had a travel blackout blind on. Then I pull the blackout blind down. Then we had blackout curtains.
Wow.
So ideally it should be completely pitch black for naps and bedtime. Obviously, as little ones get older, if they are scared of the dark, then a little nightlight is totally fine. But what you want to make sure is that you're keeping the situation the same when they fall asleep as to when they come to the edge of their sleep cycles. Often parents will say, well, we left the landing light on and then we turn it off when we go to bed.
Yeah.
That might be fine. But for some little ones, that slight change in what they can and can't see is the thing that's going to rouse them, and they're going to be like, well, things aren't exactly the same as it was when I fell asleep. It's like being on the kitchen floor. Can someone come and put the landing light on, or whatever it might be? So that's kind of, how to manage as much as you can. And I think as well, obviously, children tend to stay up a little bit later in the summer because they can hear children in other gardens and that sort of thing as well. And if your little one has, great sleep skills, it doesn't matter too much. But I think the thing to be mindful of is if you're having to sort of consistently wake your little one in the morning, that might suggest that they need a slightly earlier bedtime because they're not getting enough sleep.
Oh, that's a really good shout. And then What would you say about like blindfolds? Those little ones with the elastic and you can stick them on and they have a picture of a cat or something on.
Oh, I see. Oh, like an eye mask.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we're very much guided by is safe to sleep. So we wouldn't be recommending that for young children. My daughter loves an eye mask. And, if your little one is enjoying an eye mask, then I don't see any reason why not to. Often they just fall off in the night. But I think the thing for me with younger children especially would be sort of the safety aspect of it. I think
I'd be concerned for I always considered it for myself, but it's like, no, I just know I'm going to get up and crash into something.
It's okay, you've got it on.
Why is it so dark? Get up, bang, bang, bang. What's going on? Because I remember going like a long haul flight. I think it was Virgin actually, and they had them for the first time. They had your little pack.
Oh yeah.
And everyone put these on there, and they had like pictures on the front. So you're walking along, you're seeing like loads of cats sat in there. So it's quite funny. But from my perspective, sleeping kids, then obviously if they're not getting enough sleep, then that affects other areas like schooling and all kinds of things like that.
Massively, yeah. So if we don't get enough sleep, it really impacts our health as like a basic. So for adults, it can increase our risk of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, that sort of thing. In children, it can really impact their risk of diabetes, which obviously is and obesity, which is then going to lead to problems in later life, because if you don't sleep well enough, annoyingly, we then are more tempted to eat kind of more food and perhaps more calorific food.
Yeah.
But also it will impact their schooling. So there was a panorama, it was years ago, about 2017. They did a study where school-age children, junior school-age children, had an extra hour of sleep a night for a week, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. And I can't remember exactly, but it impacted their attention span, it impacted their recall, all of these sorts of basics that you need when you're at school by between around 45 and 65%. Wow. Like massively, not just like a couple of points here or there.
It's not like just a little. It's making significant
huge
change.
Impact on children, and lots of the symptoms of sleep deprivation can also mimic the symptoms of ADHD as well. So children can be kind of very difficult to sit and concentrate. They'll find it difficult to concentrate. Their attention span, their ability to remember things. And also when we're asleep, from like a really basic level, if you imagine when you're asleep, when you're awake, you learn a new skill. Goes into here. So for a baby, that might be rolling or crawling, talking, walking. It goes into your short-term memory. For children, it might be some maths equation. And when you're asleep, this short-term memory transfers all of this new information, the new skill, into your long-term memory. But that only happens when you're asleep. Right, so if you're not getting the right type of sleep while you're asleep, this is either going to stay here and kind of fill up, so then it becomes more tricky for new skills to arrive, or it's just going to sort of disappear and it's not going to get locked in a long-term memory. Right. So we often find when we work with parents that if a little one's working on a skill like rolling or crawling, that they'll literally develop that as we're working together, because they're getting so much more consolidated sleep. Something I always warn parents about. But just be aware that we're going to develop skills as we're working together. Yeah,
so what about the aspects of devices? Because obviously that's got its own stigma, isn't it? Like the blue light and affecting sleep as well. And they often call it the silent babysitter. There you go, here's a tablet and they're playing for it for an hour or 2 hours. Has that got a big effect, do you think, with sleep?
I think it's important to kind of separate out the ages in relation to this. So the most recent research in relation to adults and adolescents shows that it doesn't have a huge, the worry and the glasses and all the rest of it that we were being told that we should have. Actually, it's not that big of a deal. Right. If you're an insomniac, then perhaps it might have more of an impact on you. But if you have ordinary sleep, what they found is that it increases the sleep latency, the amount of time it takes you to get to sleep, by under 10 minutes.
Oh, right.
So 10 minutes is kind of, with all the drama surrounding it, neither here nor there. And actually what it's more in relation to is what's the flow, which is, if Netflix brings on another program without there being a break, or if you're an adolescent playing a video game, you get automatically loaded into the next game, for example. I'm not a gamer, so I don't quite know what the lingo is, but that sort of thing. So it's the flow, it's the consistency of keeping your attention. Yeah. So there's been obviously that's relatively new research in relation to that. Or certainly it's been everyone's more aware of it more recently. It's been around for a little while. In relation to children, obviously, as you can imagine, there hasn't been as much research in relation to blue light and that kind of thing. And it is felt that children are more susceptible to blue light. Mm-hmm. But I think also with children's programs and games, children have limited attention spans. And so everything's quite quick. There's sort of, quick attention, and the songs change or the location changes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I watched, I mean, it's probably a bit more teenagery, but I watched a movie, I think it was one of the Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. I couldn't watch it. It was just quick, cut. And I was like, I can't watch this. I literally can't follow what's going on.
I think you notice it when you go back and watch older films.
Yeah.
And, you know, my children are like, oh, this is like, when's thing going to happen?
That's right.
Whereas, of course, because, you know, children are more used to now things going on. So when we work with children, we do kind of, certainly in relation to young children, we do tend to get rid of screens around bedtime, just to remove all the possibilities that could be impacting them. You know, some children may watch TV before they go to bed and it doesn't impact them, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, of course.
But we just try and remove all the potential issues, because children are more likely to be susceptible to blue light. And of course, like you were saying, children's programs and whatnots and YouTube and that kind of thing are just much quicker.
Yeah, it's just chop. So in terms of like sleep, so getting a small child to sleep, let's say, is it a lot to do with routine? Is it a lot to do with preparation before they go to bed? Is it, you know, for example, is it, you know, making sure the room temperature's right? You know, are there loads of those nuances that we're not aware of, but obviously through years of research and study you would be? I mean, there's things like weighted blankets and all the other things. Do you, I mean, obviously each child is different, but are there sort of like fundamentals that you have to put in place?
There are. I think if you have a good sleeper, or not a good sleeper, you know, a little one, like a routine isn't going to magically fix everything.
No.
So when we talk to parents, yes, we tell them what to do for the bedtime routine, but that's not even half a page of what is probably a 14 to 16 page plan for them. So yeah, a routine's important, but if as it comes down to it, like I was saying earlier, if the little one's reliant upon something to go to sleep, then they're probably that's going to be the reason that they're waking in the night. Yeah, absolutely. You know, if we have a bath before bed or a shower, that is going to slightly reduce our body temperature. And then what happens when we go to sleep, our body temperature gets lower and lower in relative terms. You know, pulling down the blind, having a nice story for younger children, making sure that they're, you know, having a feed or a snack before bed. That's really important as well. Brushing teeth, all of those sorts of things. Talking about bedroom temperature, even a half a degree of difference in a bedroom temperature can impact our sleep. But the recommended temperature is between 16 to 20 degrees.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And for some parents, you know, they kind of think 16 and 17 is a bit too cold. So it's really important to check little one's chest or back rather than their hands.
Right.
If we're thinking about like a really small little one. So yeah, absolutely. A routine can be really helpful. And for toddlers and young children, it can kind of prepare them for what's coming next. But a good routine is not going to fix all your sleep problems.
No.
And talking a little bit about weighted blankets, in reality, they should only be used under the supervision of an occupational therapist or medical professional.
Okay, so why is that?
Because from a safety perspective.
Yeah, okay.
So if you've got
I've never had one, so I've
you need to make sure that you know, if you've got a child,
you
need to make sure that the blanket, the weight is suitable and safe for them, because obviously
are they like really like push you down? And
it depends on the weight,
right?
But obviously if you've got a small little one, for example,
an adult one, you don't
want to squish them during the night. So kind of, you know, for us, safety is always the major concern.
Of course, yeah. So have you got any examples where there's like a before and after? You know, that you've worked with a family that, you know, maybe are going for a really tough time. You've worked with them and then they've come out of it and there's a massive contrast.
Yeah. What I love is perhaps speaking to or seeing the parents afterwards, or if they followed us on Instagram and they send us messages. One of the biggest, hugest things for us, I think, is when we've worked with first-time parents and they say, oh, you know, I would love to have another child, but we just can't go through this again. And then 9-18 months later, they call us and say, oh, can we have an antenatal package, or we're having another baby. You know, we've been called all sorts of amazing things. You know, one of my franchisees, Gemma, was called a sleep witch and a sleep wizard.
Oh, wow.
An effing rock star. Faye's been called, you know, all these sorts of magical things. And, you know, generally when we're working with families, we'll work with families who maybe, you know, they have an older child, and I'm kind of talking, you know, 7, 8, 9-year-old who's perhaps always co-slept, and the family have decided that that's not right for them anymore. And, you know, we get to the end of the 3 or 4 weeks and the little one's happily going to sleep in their own beds, and they're happily sleeping through the night, and that's really lovely to see. They can then go on sleepovers or on camps or those sorts of things. I'm trying to think of specific examples, but I think because we are so expert, evidence-based, expert-led, all of these sorts of things. Whenever we work with families, if they're doing what we're asking them to do, we know it works.
Yeah, of course.
So there's probably 500-600 families that I've just worked with,
wow.
myself, where little ones perhaps woken every hour in the night, and the parents are just like, we can't do this anymore. I speak to crying mummies, sometimes daddies, but lots of crying mummies most days.
Yeah.
But I know that we can make such a difference. I teach on an antenatal course, and sometimes when we get calls from them, I actually had a message from one mummy that I worked with, not just Christmas just gone, the Christmas before, and I put a story up on Instagram just saying, if Christmas is a bit tough because everyone's enjoying themselves and you're sat not being able to have a drink, and you're maybe sat in a quiet corner feeding, and you're finding it really tough, don't worry, it gets better. I promise you, it gets magical. And I had a message from a mummy who messaged and said, I remember you telling me this time last year, and I'm so grateful that you did, because it made such a massive difference to us as a family. And you're right, a year later, it's so much better than we could ever have imagined. And that's what I absolutely love, is kind of speaking to mummies at the very beginning, mostly mummies, because it is mostly mummies, but parents at the very beginning who are really, really struggling, and they don't know how they're going to see the next day. And they're just surviving minute to minute, hour by hour. And then, 2 weeks later, it's such a dramatic difference for them.
And, and I think that's the thing, is that the children themselves develop at a rate of knots. Like you have a newborn, and then you look at a baby that's 4 months old, and that baby looks like a giant compared to that newborn. But in the eyes of the parents, they've not really seen much of a change from when it was newborn to then. And I think for me, that was at the same time, you as a parent are having to adapt and having to develop. Because as you said, 1 minute you're used to going to bed whenever you want, next minute you're waking up once, twice in the middle of the night, and then learning to deal with no sleep. And some people can get away with it for a while, other people don't, and then there's clashes and all kinds of stuff. And it's when both parents are working, it's like, well, who's the one that takes the sacrifice to get up? Well, I've got a higher paying job than you. And so there's all that sort of stuff to deal with and adapt and reshape and rechange. So for me to know that there's an organisation out there that can come alongside and say, hey, it's okay, we'll work with you, we'll make a plan to get you through this time. And guess what, rather than having no kids, you might want another one, because I
think to that point as well, it's really important. We actually just put a post up on Instagram the other day about it, is to make sure that who you're working with knows what they're doing. Because you could tomorrow turn around and say, I'm a sleep consultant. And so it's a really unregulated profession, which is why we're now members of we've been for quite a while, of the Association of Professional Sleep Consultants and the British Sleep Society. Almost all of our franchisees are members of the association as well, and they're all kind of going through the process of applying. And it's really important that who you're working with, so do your due diligence, look into the qualifications, the testimonials, the Google reviews, really look into what this person is doing.
Again, it's probably for younger kids now, but I remember I was the eldest, and then my brother came along, and then by the time whatever my parents did when we were kids, they had to do the opposite when the youngest come along, because the advice had changed. Does the baby sleep on this front, sleep on the back, sleep on the side? And it's like, I don't know, what is it now? Because we were told,
which way is up?
We were told you could absolutely categorically not let them sleep forward down. And they said, no, they have to be up. And it was just like the contradictory advice over a period of time leaves no one not knowing. So when you say, you're regulated, you're not regulated in the sense of people not going to endure whatever, but you're prescribing to organisations that give you that extra credibility, and then you've got a back of reviews.
Exactly.
It builds the trust that's needed on the advice that you have, because there is so much non-advice, and
it really is.
Families,
and opinions,
right?
and
families, parents. I was doing this, and I used to stick you out in the garage. Do you know what I mean? I used to take you on a drive with the Hoover on. It's just like all these crazy things that go on, and you've probably heard crazy stories of people
and like I said, if a family, if they're going to the car with the Hoover on is working for them, then amazing. But we're absolutely here for people that's not working for, but make sure that whoever you're working with is evidence-based. There's a lot of still sleep experts out there who will tell you that you shouldn't, blue light's really going to impact your sleep and all of that sort of thing, whereas actually the evidence says otherwise. So it's really important to find people where the experts that you're talking to actually are up to date with the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's those things, isn't it? It's like we get information that's been thrown out there, and then no one challenges it, and we just accept it, and then no one's brave enough to go, yeah, but hang on a minute, that's not strictly true, is it?
And there's a lot of opinion, I think, out there as well, as to, you know, and obviously in relation to parenting, everyone, like you said, has an opinion, and there are a lot of opinion pieces that you can find that are perhaps purported to be fact, but actually it's more just opinion, or, you know, there's the link to, I remember someone sent they were really worried about, you know, what everyone calls sleep training. It's not what we call it, but helping a little one to sleep. And they sent Faye, you know, some articles that had all these links to studies in, and the studies were not even on humans. The studies were on rats. And so, you know, ordinarily we wouldn't kind of go down this rabbit hole, but she was like, look, you know, this isn't even relevant. It wasn't even in relation to sleep. It was in relation to rats and something completely different. Yeah. But I think because there were studies in there, it's like, oh, well, it must be fact. And so we find it a little frustrating that parents who need to get more sleep, and who really feel that it's really important for their children, for their health and their, you know, benefits, that they are made to feel a certain way just because of other people's evidence. You know, for us, other people's opinions. For us, we're very much like, if what you're doing is working, just, you know, that's fine. Just leave it as it is. We're here if you need a hand, but there's a lot of but
it's even that, just to know that you're there, it gives you an added degree of confidence that, you know, if it isn't working, I can then reach out and get in touch with you. So in terms of like you're working with a parent and stuff like that, I mean, what's the sort of level of contact? Do they message you on a mobile? Or, you know, do you support them 24/7? How does it work? Or they contact you in the morning? Just for the uninitiated, how would this work practically?
Yeah. So if we've gone through, you know, if we're working with them, we've gone through we've got the plan and had the meeting, that sort of thing. We'll have a phone call the first morning after, you know, the first night, and then we'll give them as much support as they need. So we have sleep logs. We've kind of got our own sleep log design. We analyse their logs every day. Also means that if they email us, so when I check my emails before, I'll check it before I get back in the car in case anyone's got any time critical questions. But we'll be able to look at the sleep logs and see what we advise in relation to that baby. So it's not generic, oh, we think XYZ in relation to a 6-month-old. Yeah. You know, the advice is bespoke. We do offer kind of bedtime and half night and full night packages. We're not doing it for the parent, but we're there almost holding their hand whilst they're supporting their little ones, so supporting the parents through it. But it's really as much support as the parents need. But obviously Faye and I don't do quite as much sleep as we used to, because we're now concentrating on the franchise and supporting the franchisees while they're supporting their families as well.
So what's the future hold? Are you planning to build any apps or anything like that to assist?
It's funny, we have spoken about that quite a lot. We're chatting to someone at the moment who's kind of creating an app. But I think the difficulty is that there isn't a one size fits all. You know, if there was an algorithm, for a baby and their sleep, we'd have 100% created that app and sold it by now. But what we do, because, you know, we'll analyse a baby's sleep, and, you know, yes, if a baby cries before they go down for a nap, for example, they might be overtired, but also they might be undertired. And the only real way that you can work that out is by having worked with hundreds and hundreds of families. I could look at sleep logs and tell you whether a baby's tooth came through last night. I'm working with a family at the moment, and when I was looking at the logs, I was like, oh, did they have a poorly tummy? And the parents were like, no, but they did last night. So I can kind of see already what
it's the
is
patterns,
happening.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But that just comes with experience. And maybe in the future that there will be a way that AI can kind of come up with that, but I don't think at the moment.
So I'm just getting my tech head on now, so forgive me. But if you've got those logs, as in historical logs, obviously you don't need to put the person's name there, but essentially those logs are giving you data. Yeah. And so basically the data then has consistencies in there. So if all those logs were going in and into a depository, let's say, because that's what AI does, you feed it with loads of stuff, and eventually it finds those patterns for you. So longer term, you'll be able to type this person isn't sleeping because what do you think the symptoms are? Click. It will then search all those patterns and instances, and then it might go, it could be this. Yeah. Now that only can come if you've got data. Yeah. Without it, it's impossible.
100%.
But the more data that you have, the more accurate the output could be. Yeah. Now, even that said, this is where safety is your absolute concern. Where that said is, it's you wouldn't make that live. You would run it in parallel with what you currently do to see how often that's accurate. and it might mean it needs another 1,000 more cases or another 10,000 cases. But over a long, sustainable period of time, those patterns will start to emerge. And that's how for me, if it was an app, it'd probably be AI.
I think the tricky thing with that is that, for example, it probably would. It'd be like, right, either your baby's overtired or you're undertired. They are the two complete opposites.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the tricky thing, is that, you know, we would know, but you would have to trial it. But I think a parent being by themselves, the AI would be like, right, try it. It might be undertired, so they might try this, and then it doesn't work. And then maybe they've put them down for an extra nap. Maybe you've got a 6-month-old and they say, well, put it down for 4 naps because it's only had this much sleep in the day. But actually it needs to learn that if the baby has 4 naps, potentially that might's going to really impact its nighttime sleep, which will mean it wakes early in the morning because it's had too many naps.
Yeah, so again, on an AI perspective, like, it's only good what gets put in.
Yeah.
So it's based on prompts.
Yeah.
So at the same time, you've got all this data. We then have to work out what are the prompts as well to gauge the response. But listen, that's a big job because you need lots of information. But we were at a workshop the other day, which is an AI-based company, and one of the things that we're talking about is that, you know, AI is unregulated, generally unregulated. So that's looking to change. They're looking to try and bring aspects of regulation in. So then some of this sort of stuff, more evidence-based things, now has a better chance. There's better police, then we can trust it, because it can be a bit of a superpower. It's not to replace you, but it might go, I can diagnose, and then I reach out to then confirm that. Because you know what it's like. Certainly when I was younger, you would do Dr. Google, and then you go, oh my gosh, I've got 4 months to live. You know, it doesn't work like that. But now obviously the information that's coming out and stuff like that is making search like Google very, almost very archaic. And I know Google have got their own AI, but you know, you can ask questions on, say, ChatGPT and get a much better result for your things.
And I think the apps that are out there, you know, are helpful as far as they go. You know, if you, especially if you have a little one who's more textbook.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, that's going to be great to help log the sleep, log, you know, how much total sleep they've had, when does their next nap need to be, and, you know, they're already out there. That's really, really useful.
Yeah.
But I think it generally only works. We often get parents who contact us and they're like, well, we tried that and it didn't work. It actually made it worse because the nuances weren't quite up together. But I think, you know, apps, you know, as far as they go, are really, really helpful, certainly for lots of parents, even just to have the information, you know, so that they know how much sleep their little one's getting, when the feeds are, all of that kind of thing. But then often when they've got problems, that's when it falls down a little currently. Yeah,
and I think that for me is probably where you'll have the advantage over everybody else, because you've been doing this manually for years, and the more you do, the more stuff that you accrue, so the more you have accurate data to work with, where a lot of these apps are just pulling information from
Google.
Google and different bodies, different papers, blah, 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 blah. But you've got these evidence-based information that you can start to track better patterns and better results. So no, it's interesting. I mean, for me, you know, knowing that there is somebody out there, because we've all been there, you know, like you're absolutely exhausted, and then you know, and you're thinking, I don't know how I'm going to go to work the next day. What's wrong with them? Teething, you know, temperature, the light. There's so many different variables that you're trying to deal with when kids are small. And obviously, the younger they are, they can't verbalize. That's the other thing. They can't tell you what's going on. They just look at you.
Or cry.
Or cry and just scream louder. And you're like, I don't know what to do. And you just have to make it up. So it's really good to know that somebody has got that background of information, that wealth of knowledge, that say, look, we've dealt with loads, so let's put on our expertise and our knowledge and wisdom, and we'll be able to get to the bottom of it. And is 2 weeks about a right sort of time frame to say where you start to see a difference with working with people?
Where you're done. 3 to 4 nights is where you start to see a massive difference.
Wow.
So the reason we have 2 weeks is just generally because naps are a bit trickier. So naps can take a little bit longer to elongate. But if you're waking up, if your little one's waking up every night, every hour, overnight, then 3 to 4 nights, there'll be like huge differences.
Wow.
So at the moment I'm working with a little one who's around 5 months old. We're at night 3 or 4 last night. He had a bit of a poorly tummy, but he was waking every hour previously and had a couple of 2-3 wakes last night, I think, and he's diddy, so everyone still need feeds.
So obviously we talked about apps and stuff like that. Do you see yourself like doing a lot more speaking engagements? Obviously you're doing a podcast here, but you see yourself, you're going to try and educate on a much wider level, do you think?
Yeah, I think with the franchise, obviously spreading the word that way through the franchisees is really huge. Faye much more has like a support role for the sleep side of things.
Yeah.
I'm kind of out, building the brand, talking to people. I've been an expert speaker at places like Mamas and Papas, Somnex, Mother Care, John Lewis. We also kind of have corporate seminars and events that I'm clearly a talker, so I will talk. And I'm very much more into kind of, supporting the girls with the marketing and that sort of thing. So Faye and I, like I said, we only really have a couple of clients a month because of very much, supporting the franchisees. So, and that's amazing in itself because it means that we can help so many more people. As a franchise, I think probably, I don't even know now, probably 1,500 families we've worked with recently. And, and as the franchise grows, that's only going to increase. So it just means that we can reach more people with the franchisees going out and working with families as well.
Are there any limitations? Like, is it just UK, or are you thinking of going to other countries as well, or is that on the radar?
That's kind of that's a tomorrow question.
Okay.
That's on the tomorrow list.
We
do have a European trademark, and it's something I think probably for us it might need to be someone says, "Oh, I'm thinking of moving to wherever it might be. Can I have a franchise over there?" That's where currently it would happen. It's definitely not off the cards.
No. I'm thinking US. I think there's a massive opportunity there.
Yeah, there's also a lot of sleep consultants out there. In fact, actually, a lady that I worked with her little one before we launched the franchise, she trained and she's actually a sleep consultant over there. I worked with her little one, and that's what's been lovely is, Gemma, for example, one of our founder franchisees, she was a client.
Yeah.
I worked with her and her little one, and then she saw the massive change it made to her life, and she wanted to make that change to other people's lives. And she's, she has an incredible testimonials on her website. All the girls do, in fairness, but yeah, she was a client who was like, I want to make that difference to other people.
So how would someone reach out to you then? Is it LinkedIn? Is it website? Is it, how would they get in touch? Anywhere, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got LinkedIn, a website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We've just kind of relaunched our YouTube. They can give us a call, they can email us. I think, and we're even on TikTok just a little bit. It's not really my favorite platform, but we're on there. So I'd like to think that we're.
No. The good thing with TikTok gets you great reach. The numbers are higher.
Yes, they
predominantly on stuff. You'll hit more people's feeds just by the definition of it. But for me, it's a message that needs to be told and get more people to know. So next time I'm told that someone's struggling with their sleep, I know where I'm sending them.
Send them our way.
Rather than me trying. Well, feed them this or do this, or get this.
Give them a
No. Actually, I don't know. Go and speak to this team here. And
hopefully there'll be a franchisee close to them as well because, as we expand across the UK and who knows where else.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.